Hello. How's everyone today? Make sure everything's still going right. Yes, it's working. Cool. I accidentally scheduled junk pickup for tomorrow at today. I don't know how many people are going to be able to make it though. I did post on Twitter that I was gonna move it though, so hopefully some people can show up. But I do have things that need to be done today, so we'll just jump right in. Okay. Continue. Okay. I think we were gonna do Lee and Carlos first, and then move on to Park and Chang. Okay, Carlos, what is going on with you? I brought E to the auction house. She was still burning up and barely conscious. I handed her to the boss there, a middle-aged fat man named Lucky, who had a full mouth of gold teeth. Usually, when the gang mentioned taking care of someone without additional instructions, it meant to bring the girls to the auction house. Basically, I was only asked to do legwork. For the girls who had been taken care of, they had probably all been sold to people abroad. I had heard rumors that besides the legitimate auctions, the house conducted illegal ones in secret too. There were many kinds of outlandish merchandise in this building, and that included humans. Just as I was about to leave, I couldn't control my curiosity anymore. I asked the guy at the front desk, "Hey man, where do those pretty girls get sold to?" He put down the stainless steel mug in his hand. "People brought here by the Black Dragon Gang? Well, those girls are usually sent to Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia? Why there? Are they sent to be housemates? Are you stupid or something? Housemates. Your gang always told us these girls are to be sent to become human sticks. Have you ever seen a freak show? They have no tongues, eyes, arms, or legs. They have nothing but their torso left, and they're locked in a cage." I ever heard the phrase human sticks, and I eventually figured out what it meant based on his description. It is. I would rather die than live like that. As a Catholic, I had always been taught to be to do good deeds so that I could be absolute of my sins and go to heaven after joining, never be involved in something so evil. But you are. You're taking these women to the auction house to be sold to do that. No, I couldn't just let Yi suffer like this. Damn it, if only I hadn't brought her here, these people would never willingly let her go now. I had to get her out of here and then try to explain to Mr. Curran. Hey, I just remembered Mr. Curran wanted me to tell the girl something. How? What for? She's on the 4th floor. Make it quick. The front desk guy picked up today's Ming Pao newspaper and did not look up again. As I climbed the stairs, girls that were going to be sold, a strange thought suddenly hit me. Could it be possible, like these unfortunate people? The thought had come out of nowhere, but I felt extremely unsettled. Yi had been locked in a room at the end of the fourth floor. The guard had stepped away for a moment. Her entire body had been burning up. I woke her up and helped her into my own clothes, shorts, and shoes. I kept reminding her to be careful while we snuck out of the building. Poor girl, with a fever like this, she would probably die on the way to the south. I thought she was ready to go when she turned around and hugged me. Did I forget something? Oh, right. I pulled the brim hat on my head off and put it on her almost bald head, which had been shaved by Mr. Curran. It was a real shame that he had done that to her. She looked really pretty with her long hair. Yi tried her best, got herself together and left the room. Well, now was the difficult part. The auction house was quite big. Not only would it take a while to exit the building, even if she got out, the guards would easily catch up to her while she was still nearby. I had to get her more time to escape. I scourged the room. I couldn't find anything I could wear. Nothing but a long wig. I have never seen a wig before. I found it a little amusing. But there weren't any clothes. I couldn't just be naked, could I? I picked up her dress. The dress ripped in the back. I sat down with my back towards the door. I loosened the hair and let it down. I sat down with nothing but my boxer shorts on. Why did I even try it? I knew it wouldn't fit. I should have kept it intact as a memento. What an idiot I was. I heard footsteps getting closer and closer to the door. A small window on the door, I heard him scream. Then I heard the alarms. Yi had not been able to leave the building yet, and she was soon brought back. I was thrown into the street with nothing but my boxer shorts. Damn it, I couldn't just do nothing and let Yi be sold to a living hell. Lord, please guide me. The simulation exams were right around the corner. Everyone was busy preparing for it today. Mr. Wan hadn't mentioned anything about canceling the class, however. Besides, I was still his assistant to the art class, so I went along. However, the room was empty. There was no one there, not even Mr. Wan. I felt a little disappointed. Just when I was wondering whether I should go back and study for the exam. Sit down time for class. Mr. Wan walked past me, took off his coat, and laid it on the back of the chair near me. Why are you the only one here? It's the simulation exams tomorrow. Everyone is freaking out about them. I grabbed a chair and sat down. Mr. Wan seemed a little unhappy. Was he going to cancel the class today? I suppose I should get ready to go back and study too. What would you like to draw today? Mr. Wan abruptly asked. What would I like to draw? It surprised me that I was hearing this question coming out of his mouth. Or something more difficult? I said, hoping that it would make me appear more motivated. Then draw me, but you would have to pose for a long time. That is too much for me to ask. I honestly didn't want to do that. If I messed it up, then I messed it up. When I messed it up, he was going to tear me, not the drawing, into pieces. Don't overthink it. Mr. Wan took out his kit, set up the easel, and continued. I'll do a sketch too. I'll draw you. After making sure that my ears weren't lying to me, I sprang up from my chair. Wait, let me go and change first. I sprinted out of the classroom. I was still sweaty and smelly from playing tennis earlier, and I was wearing a sports jacket that was one size too large because I ordered the wrong one. It would be embarrassing to be drawn like this. Furthermore, the more I thought about it, the more I felt like this was some sort of trap. If I drew him badly, no, not if, when. With his temper, he would almost certainly not let me off the hook easily. Well, I felt like I had turned into a dead fish on a cutting board waiting to be cut up. I opened the locker I had bought when it was on sale a while ago. You just have a random dress in your locker? She had brought 2 of them and gave me one as a present. I had never tried it on before. My school uniform was still drying off at home after laundry day yesterday, so this would have to do for now. I put the dress on. It fit well size-wise, but maybe because it hadn't been washed, I felt a weird itching once I put it on, my new outfit. And so we began our sketching practice. Drawing a portrait is so hard, and my back being itchy kept distracting me. I really drawn a rough draft. Mr. Wan put away his sketch, yet he didn't ask to see mine either. I don't know. I don't think so. I was just about to leave the classroom when he stopped at the door. He looked at me and opened his mouth. He looked like he was going to say something, but he didn't. Eventually, he left with a look of disappointment on his face. What the hell is wrong with him? Let's just switch it the whole way. The dress was really tight. I looked down at the dress that was wrapped tightly around myself. I could still feel the warmth from Mii's body and smelled a faint trace of her scent. I had never worn a girl's clothes except for my sister's. I felt my face start closer and closer to the door. I swallowed nervously. I saw the guard's shocked expression through the small window on the door. I heard him scream. Then I heard the alarms. How did he know? Was it because my chest was too flat? Your back was to the door, though. Yi had not been able to leave the building yet, and she was soon brought back. I was thrown on the street still wearing the dress. Damn it, I couldn't just do nothing and let Yi be sent to living hell. Lord, please help me. I thought about it for a while and decided it was too embarrassing to change into a dress just for a sketch. I might as well just stick with the oversized jacket. The golden sunlight from the setting sun shone down upon Mr. Wan and me. It felt warm, but not too warm. Mr. Wan's sketch paper rustled lightly in the breeze, as did his hair. He looked so focused that I had found myself staring at him without even realizing it. Mr. Wan looked up. Our eyes met silently. When I finally came to my senses, I lowered my head and my heart had skipped a few beats. The bell rang. I reluctantly handed my sketch to him. If you want to tear it up, go ahead. I had lost count of how many times he had torn up my drawings. Besides, I was actually pretty bad at this. Mr. Wan handed me the sketch. It wasn't mine, though. It was his. Was that really me? I was speechless. I couldn't find a word in my vocabulary to describe it other than beautiful. I never could have imagined that a person who was always so cold and distant would be able to create something so warm and intimate. Suddenly, an idea came to me. I held the sketch up to his face and pointed at a random spot. There is a serious problem here. Mr. Wan looked at the sketch puzzled. Before he could take a good look, I took the sketch back. I will not tolerate this kind of thing in my class. I imitated his tone, took a few steps back, then tore up the sketch and threw the pieces into the trash. Haha, what a historical moment. I finally turned the tables on him. I quickly ran out of the classroom, thinking back to sketches he had shredded. I felt great about getting back at him. I know I switched the whole thing, but I thought it still said that his back was to the door, but I could have been just wrong. The dress was really tight. I looked down at the dress that was wrapped tightly around myself. I could still feel the warmth from Yi's body and smell a fresh a faint trace of her scent. I had never worn girls' clothes except for my sister's. I felt my face start to blush. I heard footsteps getting closer and closer to the door, but then they started moving away. A few minutes later, I saw Yi leaving the building through the window. She walked out of the gate, turned to her right, and slowly walked out of my sight. If she kept walking in the direction for another couple of kilometers, she would be on the turf of the blood gang. I finally felt relaxed. May the Lord bless you, Yi. Now that Yi had gotten away, I didn't need to worry about my own escape. When I was at the orphanage, I had always been the fastest kid. We used to go up on the hill to hunt rabbits. The other kids would take a whole day, but I only needed 3 hours. I ran out of the room and sprinted towards the hall with the stairway. The guard noticed me, but before he could make a sound, I had already jumped down an entire flight. I was about to go down to the first floor with just 3 jumps. I ran past the front desk so fast that the newspaper was blown out of the front desk guy's hands. By the time he realized what had just happened, and who that had been, I'd already long gone from the auction house. Still, I wandered around the streets when I finally noticed people giving me strange looks. That was when I realized I was still wearing E's dress. Carlos is such a weird character. Oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing. I lowered my head and walked quickly towards the less crowded part, myself in a strange alley that I've never been before. At the end of the alley, there was a small coffee shop. The sign looked like, and it said Maple House on it. I was stunned. I seemed to remember that Alicia had mentioned a place like this in her first few letters. Yes, she used to work here. Since Alicia had never mentioned the address of the coffee house, I had never been able to find it, yet here it was, right here, finally. I was about to find my big sister, Alicia. I ran up the stairs of the coffee shop filled with an excitement in the world, but somebody suddenly grabbed both my arms from behind. It was the policeman. He's so close. Okay, what is Park's story? My dad had a bad temper. He often hit my mom and me. One day, I knocked him out with a bottle to help Mom. I thought he would beat me up once he woke up. But I never expected the door. These strangers were here to take me away. Mom was not home. I could still hear the last words Dad ever said to me, bastard. I was not ill. I was taken to the hospital because I was a bad child. However, everybody here would insist they were not ill. Besides, the male nurses here were all strong as bears. They could lift me off the ground with a single hand. There was no way I could escape from here. I was put in a very small room, alone. There was a desk, a chair, and a simple bed. The sheets and blankets looked yellow, and they were covered with stains. The walls were very dirty too, and someone had written a lot of bad words in the corners. I would try to talk with the female nurses just to get through the day. Soon, I realized that as long as I kept saying nice things to them, they would tell me anything I wanted to know. I learned from them that the hospital was not too far from my home. They said that the president of the hospital was a relative of someone important in the government. That was how the hospital had received a lot of government funding, but the president had pocketed most of it for himself. They also said that the president was rarely here. The people who were really in charge was the vice president, Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee was an expert in his field, and he always looked out for the employees. If it weren't for him, the hospital would have closed down a long time ago. It was Tuesday. I had been here for 2 days, but hadn't seen one doctor yet. If I could have Dr. Lee examine me, maybe he would know that I wasn't really ill and let me go home. Around dinner time, I was waiting for the tray to be put through the door when it opened. A tall, slim male nurse stood at the door and said he would take me to see the doctor. I had never seen him before. He probably worked in another building. I followed him downstairs, across the garden, and into another building. We walked up to the 5th floor and stopped at the door of an office. The name tag on the door said Lee. I sat nervously on the metal stool. It was very dark inside and no lights were turned on. I could smell a faint scent in the room. It was only the two of us in the room. He asked a few simple questions first, to prove I was a good child. I answered all of the questions honestly. I also told him that Dad would beat Mom and me, and why I thought I had been brought here. It was because Dad thought I was a bastard, a bad child. You are here because you have a condition called selective cognitive impairment. Dr. Lee took off his white coat and laid it on the back of his chair. Selective cognitive impairment? I'd never heard of it. I could barely say it. In other words, you have a tendency to fantasize about events. For instance, you said your father had choked your mother with a rope, but that never happened. That's not true. Dad must have lied to you. He beat me. He even poured boiling water on me. I can show you. I took off my shirt and turned my back towards him. I showed him the burn scars that went from my neck all the way to my back. That was what Dad had given me when he doused me with boiling water. Dr. Lee raised his hands and touched the scars with his fingertips. His hands were so cold that I took a deep breath. You are mistaken. That wasn't your father who did this to you. Your symptoms are quite severe. If we don't do something about it, it might very likely turn into schizophrenia. I turned around and saw Mr. Lee untying his tie. That would be an even worse condition. People with the condition have to be tied down to their beds. They can't go outside, not even to the bathroom. Every day they need to go through electroconvulsive therapy. In more severe cases, we might even perform brain surgery on them. Perhaps I was too frightened. I felt my entire body getting warm and my knees were becoming weak. Dr. Lee held me steady. Don't be afraid, kid. As long as you do everything I tell you, one day you will fully recover. Dr. Lee put his hands on my back, pushed me against his desk, and pulled down my pants. He pressed himself against me and forced my legs open. I didn't want to stay, but for some reason I couldn't feel any strength in my arms or legs. I didn't know what was going to what he was going to do to me. I was so scared. I mean, did you actually think he was going to be a good doctor? Even before this, I was so scared. Please, doctor, let me go. I could only beg him to let me go. He just laughed. Let you go? That's not going to happen. You're here because of a lot of money. Money, suddenly an excruciating, splitting pain washed over my entire body. My brain stopped thinking. I couldn't hear anything he said afterwards. All I could hear was some deafening, buzzing noise in my ear. A full-length mirror was hung on the wall on the right side of the room. I could see two pale bodies lit by the moonlight in the reflection. I raised my hand, hoping that the smaller body in... Oh my god. Okay. I raised my hand, hoping that the smaller body in the reflection would turn out not to be me, but the person in the mirror whose face was crying and twisting in pain and disgust slowly raised his hand too, just as I did. No, 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 no! The excruciating pain shooting through my back thawed my fear as I started to resist. I struggled to move my arms around. I pushed the files on the desk away, and then I felt something, a gun. Dr. Lee was sweating heavily, and he didn't notice what I was doing. I put my index finger on the trigger and raised the gun, shaking uncontrollably. I turned to my right. I pulled the trigger. The mirror suddenly shattered into pieces and scattered all over the floor. Dr. Lee was extremely shocked. He twisted the gun out of my hand and threw it onto the metal stool. The tall, slim nurse opened the door and peeked inside, but the moment he saw Dr. Lee shaking his head, he stepped back out again and closed the door. It was still just the two of us. Nothing had changed. Even though I had smashed the mirror, its reflected horrors to smithereens. Nothing had changed. I saw numerous blue eyes in the broken pieces of the mirror. All of those eyes belonged to me. I was in the mirror. So who was the person that was outside of the mirror? I couldn't seem to recognize him. This yellow-haired and powerless child, who was he? Okay. I had finally seen a true marksman today. The custodian who loved soap operas so much that he would bawl his eyes out had averted Lieutenant King's crisis with just a toy gun. And it was from such a distance. Forget about it being a toy gun. Even with a real gun, it would be incredibly hard to hit the temple of your target. If I had gone on the mission by myself, everything would have been over by now. I hadn't realized I couldn't shoot a gun until I enrolled into the police academy. I couldn't calm down and concentrate. No matter how hard I trained, I couldn't improve my shooting performance. The academy even sent me to a specialized psychologist. Although we didn't find anything wrong, surprisingly, I got an O in my final shooting test. I became the laughingstock of the class. If it wasn't for my outstanding grades and the combat tests convincing the academy to make an exception for me, I would probably still be wasting bullets in training. Guns must simply not agree with me. If you suck at shooting a gun so much, why did you think taking a gun into this trap was going to be a smart idea? There couldn't be any other explanation. The custodian had gone back to the police station. All we needed to do was wait for the reinforcements from the station and clean up the mess. By the way, even though I wasn't good with them, I could still appreciate guns. I still thought that it would feel great if I could have one with me all the time. I was playing with a gun that I had just picked up off the ground. It must have belonged to one of those losers. When I was feeling a little drunk with power in my hand, a stranger walked out of the shadows behind the cargo container. It was a huge, muscular man in his 40s or 50s. He was wounded, but both the tattoos on his bald head and the scars in the corner of his eyes were telling me that he would not be afraid of a fight. I held the gun steady and pointed it at him. Then Lieutenant King casually said, "He's one of us." Lieutenant King was sitting on top of some passed-out lackey in a pink striped shirt. He was holding half a cigarette in his hand and had just exhaled a puff of murky white smoke. I was shocked. This person didn't look like a police officer at all. Well, I suppose they were all birds of a feather. Unit 4 must have plenty of weirdos in them. I lowered the gun straight and gave him a salute. "Sir, I'm Kang. I was just assigned to Unit 4 a week ago. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Pleasure to meet you too." It wasn't the hulking officer who responded. It was Choi, who was standing behind him with a gun pressed up against his head. "Did you think it was over?" He held the gun against the officer's temple while rubbing his own bruised head with the other hand. Crap, I had forgotten that he had only been shot with a toy gun. How could I have made such an idiotic mistake again? Lieutenant King slowly stood up. His cigarette was still burning, but he had no interest in smoking it again. "Haha, now these are the kinds of looks I like. Kid, raise your gun." I wasn't sure what trick he was trying to play, but I firmly. "I'll give you two choices. You're a lieutenant or this meathead here. Use your gun to make your pick, put a bullet in his head, and then we are done. Don't play any tricks on me." What? I must have heard it wrong. I have never been trained for this scenario back at the academy. Oh, also, I'm the kind of person who doesn't have much patience, so I'll give you 5 seconds. How about that? Let's begin with the countdown. 5. I slowly raised the gun while my arms suddenly felt like they'd been filled with lead. On one side, it was the senior officer who I'd just met. On the other side, it was Lieutenant Kang. What kind of sick joke was this? I must calm down and think. There must be some other way. But I only had 5 seconds. 4. Lieutenant Kang was standing on my right. The cigarette in his hand had already burned out. He was standing there completely motionless like a statue. Our eyes met in mid-air, but time kept flowing. My hands were shaking. 3. I pointed the gun at Choi. I tried my best to aim at his forehead. Could I make the shot? Excuse me. 2. The officer looked at me calmly. He seemed to be telling me with his eyes, "I trust you." But I couldn't trust myself. 1. Huge drops of sweat were rolling down my face. No, I couldn't make it. I gave up. The officer's head exploded right in front of my eyes. Then the gun barrel turned to me with a sliver of smoke still creeping out of it. Choi pulled the trigger, the bullet hit me and knocked me over. "Kang, how does it feel watching?" I felt my eyelids getting heavier and heavier. I couldn't see the expression on Lieutenant Kang's face. The voice of Choi mocking and taunting the lieutenant was getting further and further away too. A few weeks later, I woke up in the Busan tubes were coming out of every part of my body. The EKG machine was beeping steadily next to the bed. Captain Gong told me when he visited me that I was the only survivor from the warehouse. How could this have happened? Someone please tell me that this was all a dream. Please, Buddha, they were all good people. Please help them. I think we have to and hope that he can actually hit Three, I pointed my gun at Choi. I tried my best to aim at his forehead. Could I make the shot? 2, the officer looked at me calmly. He seemed to be telling me with his eyes, I trust you. But I couldn't trust myself. 1, huge drops of sweat were rolling down my face. When I pulled the trigger, the bullet flew out of the barrel and hit the officer's head. Good job. It exploded right in front of my eyes. Aha, aren't you a funny kid? Why don't you consider joining us? Choi mocked me with his jokes and turned his gun to me. I was still paralyzed in shock. He pulled the trigger. King, how does it feel to watch your men in front of you die? Okay. If I killed him, I would become a murderer. Where would I be able to run if I'd become a murderer? I put down the gun, tears of shame and pain streaming down my face. I decided I would survive this. And then I swore to myself that I would find another chance. I swore I didn't turn my head and I didn't close my eyes. I wanted to burn his evil face into my memory, along with the man who sold me for money. What have you done to me? Extra. Well. Let us actually aim the gun at the lieutenant. Maybe that will fix it. I pointed the gun at Lieutenant King. Choi was not easy to fool. I had to choose the lieutenant in order to save the officer. As long as I didn't hit any critical spots, the lieutenant would be okay. I could also stall for a little bit longer. 2, Lieutenant King saw me pointing the gun at him. He didn't look like he blamed me. I could see that he had understood that it was my plan to stall. 1, huge drops of sweat were rolling down my face. When I pulled the trigger, the bullet flew out of the barrel towards Lieutenant King and hit the guy lying behind him. The lackey in the pink striped shirt grunted and everything went quiet again. As expected, my terrible shooting had just made things worse. How dare you trick me? Let me show you the consequences. Choi pulled the trigger with his finger. The officer's head exploded right in front of my eye, with the sliver of smoke still creeping out of it. Choi pulled the trigger again. The bullet hit me and knocked me over to the ground. Well. hands were shaking like never before. It reminded me of the only time I ever hit inside the target. It was a very windy day and I was wearing nothing but a tank top, so I had been trembling because of I was shaking so hard. Maybe there would be another miracle to the bullet flew out of the barrel and hit Lieutenant King in his left arm. I made it. I actually made the shot. However, Choi was obviously not satisfied with the results. Kid, are you really such a terrible shot, or are you just trying to fool me? I guess I'll have to teach you a lesson. He moved his gun away from the officer's temple and pointed it at his back. Bang. A red hole appeared in his stomach. The officer's face turned pale, but he didn't wince even a little. Try not to worry us. What a man he was. Oh well, I'm also a pretty nice guy. How about I give you another chance? This time, aim at the head. See, right here. He pointed his gun at the officer's temple while laughing like a maniac. My anger was boiling inside me. I couldn't listen to any more coming out of his butter face of that bastard, but what could I do? No matter how fast I could possibly move, I couldn't be faster than a bullet. The shadow leapt past me from behind while I was trying to think. A splash of blood spilled to the floor inside of my shadow that was cast by the dim lights. The gun was sticking out of Choi's mouth. No, it was barely a mouth anymore. Barf. Choi's body was falling to the ground at the same speed as my vomit. Lieutenant Kang took the gun out of Choi's hand. There was no warmth in his eyes, and he looked like somebody else completely. The will to kill was radiating from him, the will to kill every single living thing in sight, even those that had already been encapsulated. A minute later, those who had passed out in the warehouse would never wake up again. The officer was lying next to Choi's body, still bleeding. I couldn't tell if he was still breathing. Lieutenant Kang's eyes then turned to the only remaining person alive in the warehouse, who looked into my eyes. Then he raised his gun. Who do we want to do next? We'll see how this story continues. The warehouse now looked like a scene from hell, with bodies lying all over the ground. Lieutenant King's eyes were colder than ice. He looked nothing like himself anymore. He turned around slowly and stared at me as if I was only a bug. What just happened? Was he pulling a prank on me? He looked entirely serious when he killed Choi with one blow, or rather, was this some kind of initiation test? A test that I had to pass to become an official member of Unit 4. My brain was still completely disoriented when my body jumped backwards by instinct. There was nothing left but menace. It was no prank nor a test. I could feel that what was standing in front of me at this moment was not a normal human, but a dangerous beast. It was waiting for me to expose my vulnerability so that it could lunge at me and tear out my throat. We were both standing dead still. We were both staring deep into each other's eyes, and we were both thinking of the best way to prevail. I didn't have enough confidence even at the Shaolin Temple. I had never faced an opponent like this before. Nevertheless, I began to feel something, perhaps because of my training at the temple. I was feeling nothing but growing excitement, and I was eager to give it my all in this fight. It was almost as if I had been waiting for this day all my life. It would not do me any good if we kept stalling like this. I decided to at least poke my opponent first. In the world of Kung Fu, speed defines the winner. Time to fight. He raised the gun. I flung my tail out as hard as I could. I took a shot and flung my tail out from my sleeve. The spear had cut through the air with a shimmer, aimed at the lieutenant's right hand, which was holding his gun, but Kang's left hand clenched into a fist, and he slowly lowered it. He was holding my tail firmly in his hand. Despite having been cut by the spear tip, blood was dripping down from his wrist. Behind his fist, his eyes were staring at me with nothing but contempt. No one had ever been able to stop my tail with their bare hands before. At this point, I had no choice but to drop my weapon. But Lieutenant King had finally seen his chance. He sprinted at me, still holding my tail in his left hand and the gun in his right. Then I heard a gunshot before I sank into an infinite darkness filled with nothing but regret. A few weeks later, I woke up in the ICU of Busan Metropolitan Hospital. It was incredibly lucky to survive the shot to my head. However, the bullet was lodged inside my skull in a delicate spot, so the doctors could not take it out. As a result, I had to endure occasional migraines for the rest of my life. With this health condition, I thought that I would be resigned to some boring post like the archives, but I didn't expect that they would ask me to resign. The police paid me a lot of money as compensation, but that was not what I had wanted. I wanted to be a police officer. How could everything turn out like this? It was the middle of the night. The full moon was high in the sky. A group of cats were gathering at the empty lot near the street. They were both house cats and stray cats. They formed a circle around a big empty pipe in the center of the lot. On top of the pipe sat a fat black cat. It was unsurprisingly about how humans like pet dogs. What we should do to make the humans like us more. Those two-legged walking monkeys only consider dogs to be smarter than cats because the dogs would fetch newspapers for them. But the truth was the opposite. Why would we bother to beg for the stupid humans? Who couldn't even tell that cats were smarter than dogs to like us. I turned the dead sparrow in front of me around, making sure there was nothing edible left. No matter how many times I tried it, the taste of the organs were still disgusting to me. Yuck. I puked up a puddle of yellow liquid. A couple of house cats nearby sprinted away from me. Pussies. Black ate the fat black with his boring and pointless speech. I was picking my teeth with my claws. Suddenly, I felt a chill in the air. It was already late August. Late autumn, soon it would be the worst season for us stray cats. I was 1 year old now, almost 20 in human years, so I was fairly strong. Still, lots of homeless cats had died at my age. Instead of wasting my time figuring out how to please these monkeys, I'd rather be preparing for the winter. That pipe seemed to. I walked towards Blackie and jumped up on the pipe. Every shiny eye stared at me, including Blackie. He completely forgot that what he was talking about. Excuse me. May I lie down here for a bit? You may keep going. You thought I would say that? Winter takes all. The losers lose it all. And I, Spotty, wanted it all. I stared at Blackie and puffed up my fur. That's right. Overwhelmed, my opponent was the dried salted fish. I spat on his. He immediately swung the salted fish and hit my face with it. This enormous piece of dried salted represented unquestionable. Whoever had the dry salted fish was the leader of the cats. Furthermore, whoever was attacked by the dried salt meant me would be considered the public enemy of the entire cat clan. A dozen cats sprung at me, biting my ear, clawing my paws, stepping on my back. Humans had a saying, 2 fists for no match, facing 40 claws. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I'm glad Spot. A piece of dried fish and a gun? I think I could come up with something funny here, but I can't really switch them like this. How could a cat hold a gun? Of course, that's what our power is. No matter what, events will unfold exactly according to your arrangement of the text. Even if it was something ridiculous or even supernatural, it is still within the realm of reasonability for us. This is how we are able to help Jimmy's class with the relay race. All we did was switch Jimmy from the last leg to the third leg, remember? As long as the intentional logic of the story is not self-contradictory, there won't be any problems. In this case, what kind of logic shall we consider self-contradictory? For example, earlier we discussed that someone fainted or even died. He or she would not be able to perform additional actions. And therefore, any additional actions after a piece where the subject passed out or worse would automatically disappear. Okay, I think I got it. I mean, if we do switch these, then Chang's not gonna die because you're not gonna get killed by a salted fish thrown at you, I guess. But maybe Spotty's gonna die? Whatever, we'll try this. I took a shot. I flung my tail out of my sleeve. The spearhead cut through the air with a shimmer aimed at Lieutenant King's right hand. But it stopped right before the lieutenant fist, and he slowly lowered it. He was holding my tail firmly in his hand. Despite having been cut by the spear, blood was dripping down from his wrist, and at me with nothing but contempt. No one had been able to stop my tail with bare hands before. At this point, I had no choice but to drop my weapon, but Lieutenant King finally saw a chance. He sprinted towards me, still holding his tail, still holding my tail in his left hand and a dried salted fish in his right hand. He raised the fish high up in the air and slapped it down on my face as if it was a hammer. After a loud and crisp slap, I fell to the ground with a fish-shaped mark on my face, and my conscience began to drift away. I lost. Blackie was surprised by my spit, and then he aimed a gun at me and pulled the trigger. Wait, why did he have a gun? Bang. An enormous sound rang across the lot. A few windows in the nearby neighborhood lit up. All of the cats were scared. They were all paralyzed where they stood. A filthy smell of urine. I left the lot and felt my own ears, realizing that one of them had a hole in it. I thought to myself, perhaps I should go and get a gun too? Well, okay. I think we'll change it back and just switch the bottom two. My spit flew into his eyes and temporarily blinded him. I thought I had the upper hand, but Lieutenant King swiftly held up his right hand in my direction based on nothing but hearing. He fired multiple shots in less than a second. No matter how good I was, I couldn't dodge the barrage of bullets. I lost. I slammed my tail on the pipe. Bang. It was my battle cry. Experienced Alpha. He only hesitated for a second and then swung the dried salted fish and hit my face with it. The enormous piece of salted dried fish represented unquestionable authority. Whoever had the dried salted fish was the leader of the cats. Furthermore, whoever was attacked well, this didn't work out either. I got ranked E. Didn't think that was a rating. Oh, no, I think they said it. I don't think I've ever gotten it, though. Okay, let me just look it up. Oh. Oops, we try. So. Okay. The cats scattered as fast as possible as they could, including Blackie. Only I was sitting on top of the pipe in the empty lot, and my urine was dripping down from the pipe. In any case, this was my territory now. My spit flew into his eyes, temporarily blinding him. I thought I had the upper hand. But Lieutenant King swiftly took a swing at me with his right hand based on nothing but hearing. He wasn't an easy opponent, that was for sure. A dried salted fish flew out of his right hand, charging towards me like a flash of light. Wait, a salted fish. I quickly moved aside and dodged it. Thank goodness it was just a salted fish. Well, now that you have missed your chance, it is my turn. I stomped on the ground and sprinted forward. I tightened my back muscles and rotated my shoulder. Then I swung my arm with my shoulder and finally punched him with my fist. Attack 3, Thunderbolt Punch. I hit Lieutenant King straight in the chest. He flew backwards and slammed into a pillar. Finally, I could tell that he would be dreaming about Buddha for a while. I wiped the sweat off my face and let out a long breath. I had avoided hitting the lieutenant's critical spots with the punch earlier, so I knew he should be okay. But what kind of person was he? I never realized I could witness not one but two masters in the Busan police precinct today. The custodian from the armory and Lieutenant Kang. How interesting. I suppose it wouldn't be too bad to stay in Unit 4 then. I would love to spar with the lieutenant in the future. There we go. What is wrong with this pen? It's not working again. What great timing. It's so annoying. Willie gave me this pen, although it looks like a pen, it's not for writing. I need to use it to slice up the letters, which will then split into pieces. I can then rearrange the pieces before pressing a button on the pen, which makes the pieces reattach themselves into an intact letter. Afterwards, the events in the human's life will happen according to my new arrangements. I can even read about the aftermath in the letter. However, recently the pen had started to act strangely, rumbling. Strange. Willie has normally brought me snacks by now. Willie, where are you? It's so dark. Where had he gone? It's so dark here, and these stairs feel very old. Ouch. Why is it so dark here? Is the light bulb out? Yeah, it's been for a long time. Why don't you have it fixed? Wait, why can't we fix it ourselves? Aren't we gods? Shouldn't we be able to fix a light bulb with a simple wave of a hand? Who told you that? Even gods have their limitations, and we can't get whatever we want. You should learn to appreciate what we do have. Are you saying we need to buy things too, like humans? Well, we're not entirely like humans in this regard. We don't have to pay rent or mortgage to live here, but not everything is free. We don't need money, but we need faith from the humans. You mean the more people that go to the temple or church to pray to us, even worship us, the better our lives will become? Yes, more or less. However, we are not like those gods in the normal sense. For example, in a place with an extreme drought, people would often pray for rain, right? The normal gods would just give them rain if the faithful were deemed worthy. This way, the humans would know that their wishes have been granted. But if we were to grant their wishes, it would mean that the drought had never happened in the first place. Because there had never been a drought. Therefore, they never would have had to pray either. I see. So you're saying that all those people who asked for our help never realized they have done so? Does that mean we're going to starve to death? That's not going to happen. But we might be living in poverty and we might be suffering. It's hard being a god. Well, don't think about it too much. Anyway, were you looking for me? Oh right, I almost forgot. The pen hasn't been working well recently. Is it broken? It's too dark in here. I can barely see. Let's go upstairs to your room. Isn't there a room right here? Speaking of which, didn't you just come out from there? Is this your room? Yes, it is. Well, no. I haven't even asked yet. The more he does not want me inside, the more curious I get. Is he hiding something unspeakable? But I twisted my ankle when I fell down. I really don't want to climb the stairs. No problem. Huh? How'd we get up to my room? Shrugs. Because I'm a god. That's awesome. You know how to teleport? Can I do that too? Perhaps. Let me take a look at the pen. Well, it might be getting too old to work properly. Just try again later. It should be fine. Anyway, I'll leave you to it. I'll go prepare some snacks for you. Just lie down and rest your ankle. Teleportation? I want to teleport. Well, that didn't work. How could I do that? Okay, we'll do, and then call it for the day. Hopefully it's not too long of a letter. Port of Busan, near Warehouse 23. About 40 people were there, lying, standing, running. The fishermen who were up early for work had gathered around when they realized that something big had happened. The reporter who had heard some tips were huddling with them, hoping to catch any newsworthy material that could make a career, but the only two people who knew what had happened had already left the scene. The ambulance was traveling as fast as it could while trying to remain steady. Lieutenant King was lying on the seat opposite me. He was still unconscious. The medic said that he was basically asleep, and that there was no need to worry. I wasn't surprised. After all, I had intentionally avoided his critical spots earlier. Maybe after the nap he would be more relaxed. Tired. I felt so tired. First I had knocked out a mob, and then I had to fight the lieutenant. I hadn't slept the whole night. Still, I had so many questions in my head that I couldn't rest at all. Why would Lieutenant King attack me? And how had he become so strong, like another person completely? What kind of secrets had the lieutenant been hiding? Furthermore, this bald-headed, muscular man who was lying in a situation with the lieutenant, I began to find this big man suspicious too. I quickly took a syringe from the tray near us and hid it just in case one of them suddenly woke up and tried to stab me with it like a maniac. His mates. The medic mumbled something, trying to give the big man an IV. Suddenly, the ambulance took a sharp left turn, and the driver slammed on the brakes to slow down. I heard a few curses from the driver's seat. The ambulance started again, and we noticed that the needle had slashed the muscular man, and there was a deep cut in his arm. Strangely, though, that there was no blood coming out of the cut at all. Transfiguration. I stared at the red operating sign in the ER. I was trying to remember the documentaries about transfiguration that I'd seen in the police academy. Transfiguration was a skill that not only could change one's looks, but even one's figure. A transfiguration expert could wear a disguise that was good enough to fool anyone further than 20 meters away, centimeters away. That was my first time ever witnessing it at such a close distance. It was shocking. It was so shockingly real. The bodysuit had different thicknesses in different areas. The thicker parts perfectly resembled the texture of bulging muscles. The suit had been completely skin-tight, once put on a person, leaving no gas, keeping people from sensing anything unnatural by contact. It was very difficult to replicate the texture of real skin on the suit, though. Most people who wore it to transfigure themselves would be exposed when people touched their skin. However, this female senior officer with a perfect body was brave enough and skilled at gang, all while pretending to be a shirtless meathead. It simply meant that she must be a master among masters in transfiguration. The people in Unit 4 were practically superheroes. I took out a pack of tissues from my pocket and calmly wiped off the blood coming out of my nose. Not only was this my first time seeing somebody use transfiguration, it was also my first time seeing a naked, gorgeous woman like this. Lieutenant King had told me before that Officer Yeon had never attended the police academy, so she was even younger than me. Full of shining long and straight black hair, she was essentially a goddess from my dreams. From now on, I would be able to spend time with a senior officer like this every day. Chang, would die a happy man any time now. A young nurse. She ran towards me as I was the only person in the hallway. Are you a family member of the patient? I nodded my head, shook it, and nodded again. She has lost too much blood. We need at least 1,200 cc more of a transfusion, but we are running out of blood. There hadn't been enough donations recently. Our blood bank doesn't have enough blood of her type in storage. We are also having a shortage of other type too. I think it is over. Gee, had it checked before. Let me think. Yes, it was type A. Lieutenant King, who had been asleep since we got to the hospital, was suddenly standing behind me. Mine is type B. The nurse looked sympathetic. I'm sorry, but neither of your blood types is a match. I'll have to go and call another hospital. I hope it's not too late. A few minutes later, after she hurried away, the sign went off. The doctor slowly pushed open the door to the operating room. Everything seemed to be moving in slow motion, and the door looked like it was as heavy as a mountain. I'm so sorry. I held my head in my hands, staring at the floor. I couldn't breathe. It was all because of my little trick. If I hadn't shot her, if only I had been a better police officer, she would still be alive. I think we just need to make her blood type A so we can give her our blood. Try. And the nurse looked at me. In that case, we can only take 400 cc from you, but 400 cc isn't enough. I'll draw the blood from you first and go call another hospital later. I hope it won't be too late. I watched as the nurse hurried away, then I realized Lieutenant King had gone too. Half an hour later, the sign went off. The doctor slowly pushed open the door to the operating room. Everything is in slow motion. The doors looked like it was as heavy as a mountain. I'm so sorry. I held my head in my hands, staring at the floor. I couldn't breathe. Lieutenant King had just rushed back in with a few colleagues. He must have found some people who matched the blood types. After hearing the doctor's words, he angrily kicked at the hospital bed in the hallway. Yes, they were too late. mean, I don't think the lieutenant can give much blood, considering he was bleeding. But maybe I'll be fast enough to run and find other people. The nurse looked at Lieutenant King. In this case, we can only take 400 cc from you, but 400 isn't enough. Blah blah. I sat beside them. I watched as the nurse drew the blood from the lieutenant, but there was nothing else I could do. Once she was done, the nurse picked up the tray and was about to leave. Wait, take some more. Lieutenant King suddenly grabbed her hand. But if I do, you'll... She tried to wiggle her hand out, but the lieutenant was not letting go. Just do it. It's my blood, and I get to decide what I want to do with it. I completely understood the lieutenant. If it had been me, I would do the same thing. Not just 400 cc, but if I had 4,000 cc, I'd be willing to donate all of it. The nurse put down her tray and drew another 200 cc. The lieutenant still wanted her to keep going, but she wouldn't do like she was trying to escape from us. An hour later, the sign went off. The doctor walked out, saw us, and rubbed his eyes. The operation was a success, but the patient had lost too much blood, and we are not sure when she will wake up. In the worst case scenario, I clenched my fists. Lieutenant King breathed. Breathing was getting louder and heavier too. She might fall into a vegetative state. Okay, so apparently the answer is B A O A. Great, both of your blood types are a match. We'll take 400 cc from each of you, plus the last 400 cc of type O blood in our storage, and it should be enough. I'll draw blood from you both immediately. She gently pushed a needle into my arm. I watched as my blood slowly filled the bag, thinking about how it was going to save her life. I had been to tell you something. Oh, you have been in my unit for a while now. He's been there for Lieutenant King, who had had his blood drawn earlier, leaned on the long bench next to me and spoke to me. Considering what I had accomplished today, was he going to reward me with something? To tell me something? Could it be, you are very good? You are the best new recruit I have ever seen? I just couldn't stop my imagination. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, and then he must have realized that he couldn't smoke here. So he took it out and put it back into the pack. Nice. Okay. So we will do Alicia and Lee's story next week. Okay. Yeah, we'll keep working on this. I think we're getting kind of close to being done. Maybe. I think this is supposed to take like... I looked this up earlier. Or my phone can just crash. Thank you. oh, there we go. Finally something's working. Okay. Yeah, the game's like 10.5 to about 17 hours. So we're about halfway done. Maybe. Oh, cat! Well then, we will call it for the day. I will. It is an interesting story and stuff. But let's see how it keeps going next week. Bye.